Hey, what's taking the New Orleans Saints so dang long? We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much as always. Make it Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget we're free and available on all of your podcast apps and on YouTube as well. I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, your New Orleans Saints expert, credential member of the media, CrescentCitySports.com, USA Today Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, who sponsors Crossover Thursday all across the Locked On NFL channel. They've got everything for you in terms of daily fantasy made easy. All you have to do is pick 2 to 5 players and choose whether or not they're going to come in at more or less than their Prize Picks projections. Takes about 60 seconds to enter, and if you get those right, you can win up to 10 times your entry. Well worth it, if you ask me. Legal in just about 30 states around the United States. Go and check them out today. And don't forget to use the promo code LOCKEDON for your first-time users, so you can get a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDON over at prizepicks.com or with the Prize Picks app. On today's episode, we're going to start off by answering the question, just what the heck is taking the New Orleans Saints so long? Don't worry. You don't need to be worried. But it is a little astounding, isn't it? So we're going to break that down. We're going to take a look at a reason to be excited about the 2023 NFL season if you are a New Orleans Saints fan. It starts with young stars on offense, and one of those young stars on offense also getting some early honors, which is where we wrap up today's episode. But I want to start off with the fact that there's still no movement for the New Orleans Saints coaching staff, and a lot of you are wondering why. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm usually a patient person, right? I'm a very patient guy, but even I'm looking at this going, man, this is taking a minute. Like, this is taking a much longer time than you feel like it should. And again, listen, it makes perfect sense that you would feel that way because you want this team to be good. That's all that it is, right? You're a fan of the team. You want the team to be good. So you want to see them making the moves necessary to get good and get better than they were in 2022. So I have a couple of reasons why I think that things might still be taking a little while longer. I absolutely expected Tuesday night or at some point on Wednesday for some news around whether it be a move or commitment for the New Orleans Saints coaching staff, specifically at offensive coordinator. We know Dennis Allen is back at head coach in 2023. That was really never in question, honestly. But there's a couple of things to remember about the New Orleans Saints. And a couple of them I have to remind myself of too, because again, I'm genuinely surprised that they haven't announced anything so far about their coaching staff in 2023. And I know the New Orleans Saints, they take their time, like they work on their own schedule. They don't work on anybody else's schedule. They don't let outgoing free agents push them around, right? They set a price. They set a deal, and if that player doesn't want that deal, then they say, all right, bye, Felicia, and then that player is out the door. We've seen it over and over again. We also, though, know that the Saints never really make a big splash on the first day of free agency. They usually wait it out. They focus on their in-house guys first, and then they go to, the contracts that are out there in the second, third days, fourth days, fifth days, in June or July, like Tyrann Mathieu and Jarvis Landry, whenever they were signed. I know it wasn't June or July. It was like May or whatever, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like they waited until after the big free agency push, all of that other stuff. And so with all of that, I understand a little bit, but this right here, still a bit surprising. I mean, we just watched the Pittsburgh Steelers commit to offensive coordinator Matt Canada, a curious decision, if you ask me. They went through most of the season without even having a touchdown outside of the red zone until late in the season. We've watched, a couple of interviews start to happen around the NFL at offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Remember, the only ones that are able to do that are guys that are coordinators that aren't currently on rosters, aren't currently on teams, stuff like that. Although you can start to request permission, but that's different than actually having the interview. So guys like Vic Fangio, for instance, they can go and interview willy-nilly. Same thing for like a Mike LaFleur, who's part ways, I guess you could say, with the New York Jets. Joe Lombardi from the Los Angeles Chargers was fired on Wednesday. He could go out there now and interview all willy-nilly, although I don't think he gets another coordinator position. He's had that shot twice. That usually doesn't bode well for somebody that gets the shot and then gets fired twice. So you see all the other teams kind of making the decisions, but what if the New Orleans Saints aren't interested in somebody that's just available, open in the market, right? What if the New Orleans Saints are looking at somebody that's still coaching? There are a couple of names that we've mentioned on this show that fall into that category, right? A Brian Johnson, quarterback coach out of Philadelphia. Bobby Slowik, the pass game coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. I talked about my interest in my interest in Mike LaFleur. Bobby Slowik is cut from the same cloth, coming out of the same position, all of that. Could that be what the New Orleans Saints are looking at and saying, well, can't interview these guys until the 23rd, 25th anyway, so why rush? Why not keep everybody in the building and keep everybody all happy and well fed and get them to do the evaluations and then move on should you decide? Or maybe, and this is my second kind of reasoning, is that they're waiting to see what happens with Sean Payton. They're waiting for the Sean Payton shoe to drop. And maybe that gives you an idea of what kind of assets you have over the offseason, what you're then able to pursue, who you're able to pursue, where you're able to draft, all of these other things. There's definitely an impact of the Sean Payton trade. So maybe they're also waiting for that to finish up. I don't know. It could be one of those things. It could be neither of those things. It could be both of those things. It could be both of something else. But the fact of the matter at this point is that whenever the New Orleans Saints do make the decisions around their coaching staff, they'll have to get whatever those decisions are right. And they could very well make the decision. Don't be mad at me. I'm just telling you, it's a reality. You already know this anyway, but they could make the decision to commit to the same coaching staff in 2023. I highly doubt that's going to be the case. I think there will be changes going into 2023. They played the in-house cohesion continuity game in 2022, and let's just be real, it didn't work. And I know the Saints dealt with injuries on offense. They changed quarterbacks, stuff like that, but the injuries on offense didn't keep you from not utilizing the guys properly that were healthy, right? Decision-making in terms of personnel and taking your best players off the field at pivotal moments and at key times, not utilizing your best players on third down and in the red zone, yada, 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 not finding your identity at any point throughout the season. Are you going to run? Are you not? Oh, Taysom Hill works. Okay, well, let's go away from that for 2 weeks. Things like that, right? Like those question marks, those decisions were questionable and had nothing to do with the injuries, right? So let's just have an honest evaluation here. And maybe that's what the New Orleans Saints are looking for. Maybe they're looking for an honest evaluation. And then once they get that honest evaluation, they know they're going to go after guys that might be employed right now anyway. People that might be employed right now anyway. So they couldn't talk to them as of Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday of this week. Or maybe they're just waiting on the Sean Payton thing to fall so that they know, okay, here are the building blocks that we have. Now, how do we want to make sure that we're setting that up? How do we want to build our coaching staff knowing that we have those building blocks? How appealing can you be being able to tell a potential offensive coordinator, hey, we've got a first round pick, so we can go after any of those sort of second tier quarterbacks that you really like in the draft? How much more appealing is that than not having that, right? So there's a lot of ways that this can all unfold, but even I, as the patient one, usually am saying like, good Lord, this is taking a long time. Like this is taking a minute. So don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. And honestly, I'll be honest with you too. Like if the Saints do make that commitment to returning the same coaching staff, which would bewilder me, you would have every right to expect nothing to be different in 2023. You would have every right not to expect that until they show you otherwise, right? Like until they prove it out on the field. Completely get it. And I think because of that, that's another reason. Like this team, they want to sell tickets. They want to win for the fans. They want to do right by the fans. They want that. So why wouldn't you make those changes and take those strides to getting better? But in terms of why it's taking so long, maybe there's a couple of reasons for it, but goodness gracious, even I'm sitting here going like, okay, what's happening? When are we getting there? So I don't know. Just some thoughts on why this might be taking a long time. And you're not wrong, by the way. It is taking a long time. Now, the New Orleans Saints, if they do make the decision to make moves, make changes, particularly on the offensive side of the coaching staff, that could lead to some exciting things for the New Orleans Saints in 2022. And it could even, if they get, in addition to that defensive coordinator spot, 3 things right this offseason, they could be the best offense in the division. I'll tell you how they can get there as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. In today's episode of Locked On Saints, brought to you by our friends over at Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your sports wagering needs out there. Whether you're looking for odds, lines, props for the remaining playoff games, you want to keep betting up on some end of year awards, things like that. You want to take a look at maybe odds on where some of these head coaches might go, or odds on the next head coach for the Arizona Cardinals or the Denver Broncos, all that. You can find all that over at Bet Online, as well as news, articles, podcasts as well, keeping you up to date with all the trends in action. Fastest way to keep up with all of that is honestly their podcast. And I know you like sports podcasts. They got them for you over there as well. You can find whatever it is that you're looking for over at betonline.net today. And that's just the NFL that I mentioned. They've also got the NBA, MLB, NHL. They've got not disc golf. They got golf. They've got disc golf is the other company that we work with, as well as like esports, action sports, auto racing, all of that. So make sure you go check them out today. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Why should you be excited about the New Orleans Saints 2023 season after a disappointing 2022? Your hesitation is absolutely valid, but let me tell you one thing here. The New Orleans Saints could go from being offensively disappointing in 2022 to being the best offense in the division in 2023 if they make 3 right decisions. Appreciate you as always making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to also check out Locked On NFL as well. Keep you up to date every single day with all the big stories going on around the league. Keep predictions, get you ready for games every Friday and every Monday. Game to Game brings you the local insider's perspective on what happened over the weekend. Locked On NFL, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. So why should you be excited about the New Orleans 2023 NFL season? Now, I'm going to caveat what I said just a second. Small caveat though, right? I mentioned that they can do this all with 3 right decisions. And I mean 3 right personnel decisions. The one caveat, of course, is that all of this starts and ends at offensive system, offensive coordinator. If the Saints don't get that right, or if they don't change it, so if they don't get that right, then things don't go well in 2023. Let's just be honest. If they don't change anything, then you have every right, like I mentioned before, to expect the same product that you saw in 2022 in 2023 until they show you otherwise, which is possible, especially if they improve at quarterback or they improve some of the skill positions, things like that. But those things could all come together to make the New Orleans Saints the best offense in the NFC South in 2023. So you get the offensive coordinator, offensive system stuff right. Okay, let's say that happens. The next piece, of course, is quarterback, which is a huge question to answer. And I'm not trying to diminish how big that is, but what do the Saints really need at quarterback if they have a reliable identity and if they have a reliable offensive system with a reliable offensive play caller? What do you need at quarterback? You need a game breaker? No, not necessarily. You need somebody that can manage that system, that can execute that system more accurately, and that can make a play here or there, particularly out of structure. Would be nice. That's something that the New Orleans Saints were very invested in going into the 2022 season. It didn't work out for them. They went after Deshaun Watson with like abandon. Like they were willing to trade a bunch of stuff. They cleared out a bunch of cap space, all that. So, look, they were willing to do that in 2022. Go and do that in 2023, whatever, if you fall in love with the quarterback. But the main key here is that you don't need like a game breaker, right? You need somebody that can run your system and that can make some plays out of structure every now and then. It can be a little bit of a playmaker. Great if you can find a playmaker. It'd be great if the Saints had somebody on their staff that, on their roster that makes plays at quarterback. Like, I don't know, maybe a Taysom Hill or something like that, or a Jameis Winston or something like that. But, we'll see. We'll see what kind of a real opportunity those guys have in New Orleans in 2023. But if the Saints get that right, which is an easier sort of hurdle to leap if you're not having to go out there and grab somebody that is a Lamar Jackson or a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers or whatever. If you're able to instead bring in somebody that manages your system, that facilitates your system and makes some plays every now and then, it's a smaller hurdle to leap. So you get that right? You got Chris Olave, you got Rashid Shaheed. That's your future at wide receiver. I'm sorry, y'all, but it looks like Michael Thomas is going to be out of here. At this point, I would be surprised if he sticks around or if the Saints keep him around in 2023, knowing that keeping him and allowing him to play 4 games in 2023 costs you over $60 million in 2024 because he has a roster bonus in 2020 that enacts in 2024 if he's on the roster midway through March in 2023. And I believe it's 4-game threshold. If he plays those 4 games, then all of a sudden he gets another $30 million in 2024. So it seems very likely that they're headed to a split. So what do? You bring in a contested catch build kind of guy. That's something that Dennis Allen said that they wanted, that they needed, but didn't have. That could be at wide receiver. That could be at tight end. That could actually just be re-signing Juwan Johnson and seeing what kind of leap he takes in 2023. But I do think that adding another contested catch guy at wide receiver, probably at wide receiver, makes the most sense. Unless you can bring in a veteran at tight end, makes a ton of sense for the Saints and would help to take them up to the next level, because right now they don't have that guy on the roster, not an NFL contested catch guy. Chris Olave was fantastic when it came to contested catches in college. He was okay when it came to it in the NFL. I think you want a more consistent contested catch guy, but watch out, because Chris Olave's goal, he told us over the course of the offseason, bulk up. So we'll see how that ends up impacting his game for sure. Bulk up and maintaining his speed, of course. Then you look to get Alvin Kamara some help in the backfield. What's Alvin without the Chipmunks, right? You got to have some people in there that help him be a change of pace. You might have somebody to really lean into in Benjamin. Now, once he's on contract. The Saints picked him up on waivers, so they didn't only get him for 2022. They picked up his 2023 year. But you add a Tajay Spears, you add a Tank Bigsby, you add a Jahmyr Gibbs would be an absolute dream. Like, you add one of these super talented running backs in this year's draft class, and then bam, all of a sudden you're off and, no pun intended, running, right? And so you do that, you get the quarterback that can manage the game, that can facilitate your system. You add another contested catch threat, particularly at wide receiver. You add another running back to the stable of running backs behind Alvin Kamara to sort of help that change of pace start to happen again. And you know what, for a 3.5 or a 4, I don't call it a complete step because he's a restricted free agent, so it's not hard to retain him, but you bring Juwan Johnson back, then all of a sudden your offense is really, really good as long as the system supports all of them. I mean, yeah, like you gotta tune up the offensive line and stuff like that, but even without including that in this, like, the Saints offense can still be really, really good. Who's going to challenge them in terms of the division in 2023, right? Tampa's going to be in shambles if Tom Brady doesn't come back. They're already talking about moving on from Byron Leftwich. There was chatter they were trying to move on from Byron Leftwich halfway through the season. Who goes when those guys go? Carolina Panthers ain't got no quarterback. They don't have a head coach right now. Like, they're where the New Orleans Saints were a year ago. The Atlanta Falcons might have a quarterback in Desmond Ridder. I think they have a really good quarterback in Desmond Ridder, but it's going to take another year or two for that to settle in. So who's going to challenge them in 2023 in the division? They could have the best offense in the division with 3 right decisions. Behind, of course, getting the offensive system and getting the offensive coordinator that they should have in that building. That's what it would take. And yeah, like I mentioned, like the offensive line could use a little bit of a tune-up and all that stuff, but you see teams all over the place that have bad offensive lines, but really good skill position players that are at least fun to watch. They're still good offenses. Look at the Cincinnati Bengals. So I don't know. I think we could all just use a little bit of positivity every now and then. Dang it. Especially like even outside of football at this point. Goodness. But like for the New Orleans Saints, like they have a huge opportunity here that they cannot afford to fumble over the offseason. And that's getting this thing right, getting it tuned up and ready to go in a division that's going to be absolute bleep next year. Absolute bleep next year. And you have to take advantage of that. So if you're the New Orleans Saints, that's one of the reasons why I'm surprised that they're not like jumping all over this right now, right? But maybe this is their approach to maximizing their potential in a bad division in 2023 is making it calculated and making it detailed. But they got to get all this other stuff right. But it's not a lot. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. We would have one answer or at least half of an answer by the end of this week, hopefully. And then not a super big task in terms of reloading that offensive roster going into 2022. Speaking of the talent that the New Orleans Saints have on their offensive roster, Chris Olave, already sure to be a highly decorated player in the NFL as long as he can stay healthy. And he's already starting to get the early attention that he deserves. I'll tell you how as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat and you don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try Built Bar. We just got through all the holidays, and so, one of my goals is to, I did okay during the holidays. I didn't put on a lot, so, I just want to keep it that way for the most part, but I still want to be able to have something that I love, something delicious, and something that's healthy, but that's actually tasty, and that's where Built Bars come in, because they're so good that you won't even think that they're good for you. They're perfect for your New Year's resolution. And right now, you can get these bars that are only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, but a whopping 17 grams of protein per bar, covered in 100% chocolate, and all of their fantastic flavors, not only at Built.com, but in the box stores as well. You can get a 4-box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, and coconut puffs over at Walmart today. Or if you got a Sam's Club near you, you can grab a 13-bar box of any of their hit flavors like brownie batter and churro. Don't worry, you can thank me later. So head over to your nearest Sam's Club, Walmart, or over to Built.com and try the best tasting protein bar that you deserve today. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with a quick look at Chris Olave, the New Orleans Saints' explosive rookie wide receiver in 2022, who paced for most of the season all rookies in all the major categories of receptions, receiving yards, first downs, all of that. Chris Olave was absolutely outstanding for the New Orleans Saints. Did a key piece to what offensive success they were able to find, which was mostly through the air. And now he is somebody that we all know is going to be very likely highly decorated throughout his career, is seeing the early attention that he deserves, being nominated as one of the finalists for Pepsi Rookie of the Year. Now, do keep in mind, this is different than what you see at the NFL honors in terms of AP, Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Defensive Rookie of the Year, but it's still a major end-of-year award. This award is one that goes to a single rookie that is considered the Rookie of the Year. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind. This award has been around since 2002, and Chris Olave would be the second New Orleans Saint to win this award if he does indeed win the award. The first, of course, was Alvin Kamara back in 2017. Chris Olave would also become the fourth wide receiver to win the award, only the fourth, believe it or not. In which case, or not in which case, but if that happens, he would then follow up Jamar Chase from just last year, so he'd be the second wide receiver in a row, Keenan Allen from 2013, and Percy Harvin from 2009. That's a cool name to pull up out of nowhere. Unless you're Russell Wilson, I guess. But he's a finalist. So it means he's up there as one of 6 different players, including guys like Sauce Gardner over with the Jets, also with the Jets, and Chris Olave's former teammate in Chris, where am I? Garrett Wilson, also Aiden Hutchinson, the number 2 overall selection in the draft. He's nominated for this award. So pretty good company for Chris Olave. So what exactly did Chris Olave do to deserve the nomination as a finalist and potentially win this award? Now, I will tell you now, I'll hedge my bet here. I think this is very likely going to go to Sauce Gardner, but Chris Olave is not without his bid here. He led all rookies with 69.5 receiving yards per game. He ranks second in receiving yards amongst rookies, and only behind Garrett Wilson over with the New York Jets, 1,042 yards there, which also placed him as one of the 3 New Orleans Saints wide receivers in franchise history to amass 1,000 receiving yards in their rookie season, putting him just 3 yards ahead of Marcus Colston, putting him second all-time on that list behind Michael Thomas, who had 1,137 yards. So just a little bit under 1,000-yard lead there for Michael Thomas. It will hold on comfortably. He also tied for second in receptions amongst rookies with 72, again behind Garrett Wilson. And he also led all rookies with 12 games of 50 or more receiving yards, according to the press release that came along with the NFL, or from the NFL, announcing his finalist, nomination here. So he actually is tied for the 3rd most such games ever by a rookie, behind Michael Clayton, who had 14 games in 2004, and Terry Glenn, who had 13 games in 1996. So 12 games of 50 or more receiving yards. Pretty great stuff. And on top of that, maybe something a little bit more nuanced, but that is a really good metric here that you'll want to see, is that Chris Olave, and this is according to Nate Tice from over at The Athletic, had one of the best rookie seasons when it came to yards per route run. So what that means is yards, you take all of the yards and then you divide that by how many routes they ran throughout the season. So it's just about, on average, every route that they ran, how many yards they gained. He had one of the highest as a rookie, actually the 5th highest in NFL history, at least since that was being tracked, behind, listen to these names, Odell Beckham Jr., A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase. So that puts him amongst 3 fantastic LSU wide receivers. A.J. Brown, of course, out of Ole Miss. Is A.J. Brown out of Ole Miss? Pretty sure A.J. Brown was out of Ole Miss. And then, of course, Chris Olave is in that number. That's really, really, really good and super cool to see. Yes, A.J. Brown is Ole Miss. Boop, boop, boop. See, every now and then my brain works. I can't remember the difference between a Kirk Cousins and an Alex Smith, apparently, which was something I mixed up the other day. But hey, I remember that A.J. Brown went to Ole Miss. And that's why you come to Locked On Saints, I guess. So lots of really good stuff there for Chris Olave. And sure to be like continuously brightening over the course of his career in terms of like his stardom, right? I mean, you see it. Like, you see it out on the field and the way that he locks in, the way that he prepares, the way that he carries himself in practice. I got to watch all season. Like, it's all there. Every bit of it is there. And the Saints are doing a wonderful job of saying, yeah, he's been good. He can be better. And they're pushing and pushing and pushing for him to be better, which is exactly what Chris Olave is doing too, because his standards for himself are higher than that of any standards that anybody's going to put on him. His expectations of himself exceed anyone else's. Anyone else's. And that's one of the things that makes him great. That's one of the things that makes him so good. And one of the reasons why he's on this finalist list, along with some good names, but also why he's already ranking amongst some of history's best young wide receivers. And that's something that the New Orleans Saints will continue to benefit from in 2023 and should continue to keep in mind as they're evaluating their roster and their coaching staff and thinking about what they could be as quickly as September in a bad division. In a bad division. So lots of good things potentially on the way, but certainly good things potentially on the way for Chris Olave. Remember, he would also be up for AP Offensive Rookie of the Year as well, the NFL Honors Award. So these two things would be separate. So even if he doesn't win this one, he could still win the official Offensive Rookie of the Year award by the end, or by the time that it's all said and done as well. So lots to keep an eye out on as we come through. Coming up on tomorrow's episode, updates on the New Orleans Saints coaching staff, perhaps? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But if not, we'll also dive into some of the free agents that the New Orleans Saints could pursue and some of the free agents that the New Orleans Saints could see walk out the door, who needs to stay, who they could potentially let walk. We'll kind of go through and just get you ready for free agency as a Free Agency Friday, unless, of course, we have some news on the New Orleans Saints coaching staff. Appreciate you as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out Locked On NFL as well to get updated on everything going on around the National Football League. Make them your second listen today. Appreciate you as always for making this show a part of your day, a part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, say hi. And if you've got need anything around your New Orleans Saints, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.